Japanese role-playing games, JRPGs, compose some of the most iconic experiences across the medium. Popularized in the West by Final Fantasy on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987, and characterized by turn-based combat with experience-based progression, extensive narratives with diverse characters, explorable worlds, and really long runtimes, JRPGs are a staple in the video game landscape. During the SNES and PlayStation 1 console runs especially, they were everywhere and they were massive. From Final Fantasy, Pokemon, Chrono Trigger, and Dragon Quest, their impact on the industry simply cannot be overstated. I was introduced to the genre with Persona 4 Golden on the PlayStation Vita, and I absolutely loved it. Opening up a whole new world of games, Persona 4 pushed me to go back and experience the classics that came before it. Starting back with the original Dragon Quest, then Chrono Trigger and Pokemon Fire Red, and then to Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, and even moving to Persona's parent series, Shin Megami Tensei, it's clear that this genre has a long and storied history, consistently changing and growing. And in addition to the older stuff, I expanded into tactical and action RPGs, but I always preferred the traditional turn-based style that originally established my taste. Though going back was great, I was left waiting for a long time for a more modern take on this classic approach. But the wait was worth it. Persona 5, developed and published by Atlus, was released in spring 2017 to booming reception. Based firmly in JRPG tradition, Persona 5, or P5 for short, elevated the genre to new heights, innovating on the conventions of it and ditching the tired tropes while still striking at the core of what a JRPG is, with a healthy amount of Japanese visual novel as is standard for the series. And it's so special because the developers managed to harness their unique strengths within the framework in such a way that they created an absolute masterwork of harmony between their narrative, gameplay, and visual themes. Exactly what the genre needed at the time. Now, that's a lot of words, so I'll start this analysis off simply with the narrative. General spoilers ahead, but nothing too specific and nothing regarding the endgame. The story follows the protagonist who, after defending a woman from sexual assault by this guy, is framed for assaulting him. Expelled from his school and sent to Shibuya on probation, he's immediately confronted with a world of wicked adults using their power for personal gains. Soon after arriving, he finds himself dreaming of himself as a prisoner, and while there, he's taught by his warden about another dimension called the Metaverse. No, not that Metaverse. And he soon learns, with the help of some friends and a cat, that the Metaverse, an otherworldly physical manifestation of people's true desires, is real. And by fighting the physical manifestations of the perverted desires held by corrupt adults in power around him, they can turn their real-life counterparts into guilt-ridden, repentant shells of their former selves. The protagonist and his group of friends, through gaining understanding of who they are and the world they live in, earn their personas, the manifestation of their rebellious spirit and their primary method of combat. And over the course of the story, we see them use their newfound abilities as the Phantom Thieves, a group of outcasts out to change the hearts of adults corrupted by power. This is a story about rebellion and self-understanding, being aware of one's own position in life and having the will to reject the cards you were dealt and pursue your own destiny. From a structuralist perspective, the majority of this story centers around a conflict between two opposing forces: young versus old, innocent versus corrupt, freedom versus control. And each character in the Phantom Thieves embodies this conflict in some way, whether that involves Yusuke's quest to overcome the mentor who is stealing his artwork and finally make art that he's proud of, Makoto's journey to live her own life, not the one her older sister wants her to live, or Futaba's struggle to accept the truth that the authorities lied about the circumstances surrounding the death of her mother. As we gather our party, we see them struggle with the people in control above them, and finally, by gaining a sort of enlightenment about who they are and what they need to do, literally ripping their mask off, they can fight with us. It's anything but subtle. But they aren't just enforced through the structural conflict. They're present in nearly every stylistic decision present throughout the game. In my electronic media criticism class, we read an essay on visual style by Jeremy Butler, and in it he talks about Bordwell's 4 stylistic functions in narrative media. Essentially, 4 different ways that stylistic decisions can convey meaning in a text. Simply put, these functions are 1, to denote, essentially just the action of telling the audience what something is; 2, to express, conveying emotion; 3, to symbolize, implying additional meanings through connection; and 4, to decorate, which is to say to look visually appealing. A passive viewer will simply perceive Persona 5's visual style as decoration, but it is far more than that. Look at the use of color, how the red differentiates the characters from their surroundings. Look at how the crowd is painted as a collective, symbolizing their fight as individuals against not just the corrupt adults in power, but the mob that obeys them. Look at how the text boxes and zoom-ins rip into frame, projecting a calm and unobtrusive entrance. Look at how even in the menus, our protagonist forcefully kicks down the transitions, with a low-angle shot emanating this aura of confidence. Each element expresses this aggressive fervor, the rebellious spirit that is so central to Persona 5's identity. And that is especially true in the face of the zero-degree style that we see not just in other contemporary JRPGs, but in virtually the entire AAA video game landscape. That idea of identity, especially in relation to the world around you, is what brings me to the central argument of this video. The thing I find so interesting about the themes of Persona 5 and the way it so excellently modernizes the JRPG genre while still being grounded to its roots has to do with the time in which it was released. In 2017, the 8th generation of consoles was almost halfway through its life cycle, having begun in 2013, and yet there was no traditional turn-based JRPG on the console, at least at the AAA level. The days of abundance in the genre were long gone, as action and strategy RPGs had taken over, almost completely phasing out the traditional style. Even the most iconic franchise in the genre, Final Fantasy, with a new entry in 2016, had ditched its traditional systems, opting instead to be action-based. It seemed that JRPGs were doomed to become something entirely different. Then comes Persona 5 in 2017, a loud and proud traditional Japanese role-playing game. It sticks with the traditional turn-based combat, making it the best it's ever been. It keeps the expansive dungeons of old, but handcrafts them and removes random encounters. And bringing back the experience grinding and mountains of written dialogue, it doubles down on the long runtime. While its contemporaries evolved into something entirely different, Persona exhibits nearly all the classic conventions while evolving them to modern standards. With this context in mind, look back at what Persona 5 has to say with its narrative and with its visuals. Look at the themes with the knowledge of the video game landscape in 2017. Persona 5 was exhibiting the same rebellious spirit that is showcased throughout its runtime, and within the context of the JRPG genre, Persona 5 uses its narrative structure and distinctive style to heighten the themes of rebellion and self-understanding to such an extent that it creates a meta-narrative about the context of the title's real-world release. It knows exactly what it is, refuses to apologize for it, and pushes back against the apparent market trend that a AAA game of this variety can no longer succeed. Viewing the game through this intertextual lens reveals so much more depth as the band of rebellious teens refusing to accept the world they live in begins to look a lot like the game development studio refusing to accept the world that seems to no longer want them.